Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. Mm. All right, so first up in D&D news from this last weekend, we don't really have any D&D news, which again still sort of makes sense because we are coming off of the release of Strixhaven from last week. It is out everywhere, pretty much anywhere that you can find books, local game store, major booksellers. You might even be able to find it at a box store like Target or Walmart. Not sure about that one. But you can find it pretty much anywhere. If you are looking to get it for somebody for the holidays, definitely see if you can track down a copy. I've been out a couple of times over the weekend, and I've been able to find a decent amount of them. So I would say go ahead and make sure that you get that done if you are intending to, because if you need to order it, it'll probably take a while to ship for you. But that's everything for news. Moving on from news, we have streams for today, Monday. We have on twitch.tv/D&D at 4:30, we have the Roll20 Candlekeep Mysteries, and at 7, we have Into the Mist, also on twitch.tv/D&D. If you know of any streams that I should be plugging on this show, please let me know so that I can add them to the rotation here, because I want to make sure that I plug as many different shows as I can. And sort of expand the horizons, if you will. Now, today for T&D, I have in my You're the Greatest mug from M&D Balloons Incorporated from the late 80s. I have some Tension Tamer tea. I have a headache. That's pretty much the reason why. I have to go and glue up wallpaper and carpet all day, so there's going to be a lot of fumes. So I'm going to try and cut this headache as early as possible. Oh boy. But that is the end of that little bit of segment there. Moving on to what we are actually talking about today, which is the Rogue class for 5th edition. I love rogues. I do. I love me a good rogue. There is, in the game that I'm playing that is actually going to start streaming in January, I will go ahead and make sure that I plug that later on as we get closer to it. I am playing a druid, but my sister counterpart is playing a rogue, and she's doing a fantastic job. Rogues are a really sort of fun, dynamic class, I think, and they get a lot of really cool features that I am excited to get to talk about today. So obviously, rogues are, your sneaky kind of steely, stabby kind of guys, or gals, or in-betweens, whatever whatever. It doesn't have to be a guy. But they are a lot of fun to play. They have a lot of fluidity and a lot of dynamic mechanics that make them a very easy class to pick up, in my opinion. I actually think that rogues are the easiest class to start out as a player. They don't add any additional stuff to the action economy as a base class, which I think is really, really helpful. And so I think that rogues are a really great jumping off point for people who are new to D&D. So let's talk a little bit about them, shall we? First off, at first level, you gain Expertise, Sneak Attack, and Thieves' Cant. Now, Thieves' Cant is a special code that thieves talk and write in. Rogues talk and write in. You can actually work it into normal speech in conversation. So, you can be having a normal conversation with somebody and have an underlying message sort of slip through only to those who actually speak Thieves' Cant. You can leave secret symbols, that sort of thing with it. It's really, really useful for communicating in that way, especially if you're trying to, interact with a criminal underground sort of syndicate thing that you've got going in your campaign. Sneak Attack is the sort of bread and butter core ability that rogues get. You gain additional d6 damage dice, I guess, as you level up and score attacks. You can get Sneak Attack if you have advantage against an enemy, if there's an ally within 5 feet harrying the enemy, among a couple of other specialty ways that you get based on the different subclasses that there are. You just can't really have disadvantage, and that otherwise you most of the time will get it one way or another. And then we have Expertise, which we talked a little bit about when we talked about bards. You get double your proficiency bonus in specific skills of your choice. Expertise is always obviously phenomenal to have because it makes you a lot better at stuff. At level 2, you gain Cunning Action, which allows rogues. This is where they don't necessarily add to the action economy, but they sort of expand their action economy. Rogues, as a bonus action on their turn, can dash, hide, and disengage. with their cunning action, which is really great because so often, you just can't quite make it to where you need to be in 30 feet, and you need to be like 40 feet there. So you get that little extra bit on your bonus action to get there. And because rogues can do that, they can also dip out of a situation if they're stuck there, because they do only have a d8 hit die, which makes them a little bit squishier, and they tend to have high dex, which means they wear lighter armor, which means their armor classes tend to be average, but nothing spectacular all the time. Then at level 3, you get your roguish archetype, which is obviously your subclass, as well as your sneak attack going up for the first time. Your sneak attack goes up by 1d6 every single odd level that you gain. So at 3rd level, you have 2d6. At 5th level, you have 3, and so on and so forth. Then at 5th level, where a lot of other martial classes, because the rogue is predominantly a martial class, get extra attack. Rogues, instead of extra attack, get uncanny dodge, which allows them to use a reaction to halve the damage dealt against them by I believe it is specifically a weapon attack or a spell attack, hits you with an attack. So it cannot be an area of effect, but specifically something that involves an attack roll against you is what you will be able to have the damage of. Granted, you do give up your opportunity attack if you would be granted that later on in that round before it comes back to your turn, which is unfortunate because rogues, while they don't get an additional attack here, their sneak attack specifically says once per turn, which means that you can deal sneak attack off of your turn even if you have dealt it on your turn. So kind of a weighing of, give and take, but again, they're kind of squishy. You don't necessarily want to be going in and just like taking the brunt of hits all the time. That's kind of their thing. They're dodgy and elusive. At level 6, you pick up more expertise. You get 2 more skills that you pick up expertise in, so you get to double your proficiency with those 2 skills, which is awesome. More expertise, always a good thing. At level 7, you get Evasion, which I think is one of the best abilities to pick up in the game. We talked about it a little bit with monks, and by a little bit, I mean we talked about it during monks, when you're subjected to a dexterity saving throw, which so many like heavy hitting spells are dexterity based. If you would take half damage for succeeding on the throw, you take no damage instead. And if you fail the saving throw, you automatically take half damage anyway. Again, cutting down that damage that you take as much as humanly possible. But like the 9th level spell, Meteor Swarm, dexterity save. Give yourself a dex save, and you're pretty well off, all things considered. This one does not require a reaction, so this is just sort of live all the time for you, which is fantastic. At 11th level, you pick up Reliable Talent, which I think is another one of the single best abilities to pick up in the game, because it means that any skill that you are proficient with, you gain... let me rephrase this. When you make an ability check with any skill that you are proficient in, the lowest possible roll you can have on the d20 is a 10. So if you roll a 2 on the die, that automatically switches to a 10, which then you add your bonuses on top of that. So... when you become a high level, let's say you have proficiency in stealth, and you are a level 17 rogue at this point, which means your proficiency bonus is +6, and you have expertise in stealth, and you have a 20 dexterity. You have a +17 to stealth. That means that your base stealth is 27 all the time. You can't roll lower than 27 on that. That's wild. That is crazy. That I'm pretty sure if it were in a head-to-head kind of thing, that would actually overcome like a portent die from a wizard, from an divination wizard, which is crazy because that is their core ability. But that's not really the point of that. The point is that it's really great, and you can just like automatically succeed at so much stuff. Moving on from 11th level, at 14th level, you gain Blind Sense, which allows you to, if you can hear, sense any creature within 10 feet of you, provided you are not incapacitated, which includes hidden or invisible, which means that if something has a 40 stealth check that's right next to you, you know it's there, as long as you can hear. As long as you are not deafened, you know where that is, which becomes a real pain for DMs, because it means you can't be surprised all that often by something coming at you, like something running at you, or you can argue the case that you're not surprised at least. Or invisible things. Same boat, obviously. At 15th level, you pick up Slippery Minds, which gives you proficiency in Wisdom saving throws. Wisdom saves are obviously huge. For my money, there I would have to actually count to make sure of this, but I'm gonna make this claim, and I might be wrong. I might not be. Dexterity saves and Wisdom saves are the two that come up the most in spells. I I believe that is true, but I do not know for sure. I feel like the ones that sort of sneak up on you always are like intelligence or charisma saves. But wisdom saves are the ones that prevent you from being like possessed. And I feel like there's a lot of those things that sort of influence your brain in that kind of way. And so I think that proficiency in wisdom saves, in addition to automatically getting dexterity saves as a rogue, I mean, that's phenomenal. At 18th level, you pick up Elusive, which means that while you are not incapacitated, no attack roll against you has advantage. Which is... that's... first off, that's a lot. That's really, really good. Again, sort of mitigating the potential damage that you're taking in a passive way, because obviously they're a lot more likely to hit if they have advantage. I think the numbers work out to be it is equivalent of like a +5 bonus for advantage on whatever the roll is. But I don't know exactly how that stacks with disadvantage things. I don't know if like you have a bunch of stuff that would be giving it advantage, but it is canceled out by this ability, if then the disadvantage applies instead or not. That is kind of a judgment call in the heat of the moment. I feel like at least once or twice I would be like, yeah, that's great. And then after that, I'd get kind of irritated with it as a DM. And I'd be like, no, the disadvantage is canceled out too. You don't get to just like automatically win at everything. But you know, your table, your rules. That's kind of the point of having a DM there, and having rules that are not necessarily vague, but open for interpretation. And finally, at 20th level, you gain the ability Stroke of Luck. The direct quote from the thing is, you have an uncanny knack for succeeding when you need to. If you miss with an attack against a target within range, you can decide to hit with it instead. Or if you fail an ability check, you can treat your d20 roll as a 20, then add your modifier to it. And then once you use that feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So you really only get one shot with this, which is fair, I feel like, because it's an automatic success on something, with the exception of maybe the ability check. But most of the time, if you are treating something as a 20 and then adding a bunch of stuff to it, you're going to be fine. But those are... the rogue is really built to be like a precision thing that dodges a lot of damage. Similar to a monk in a lot of ways, but not quite there. Or not quite the same. Not quite the same. They are there in their own way. But in talking about all of that, you notice that I didn't say anything about, like, you can use a bonus action to do stuff. You can use... The only thing really is Uncanny Dodge at 5th level, where you get an additional reaction. Other than that, for the most part, you are not picking up a bunch of extra stuff to keep track of on your turn, which is really, really great. And you get your sneak attack once per turn. You don't like have to track usage of it. There's no resource management there, which is why I think that this is a really, really good base class for anybody that wants to get into D&D for the first time. Plus, a rogue is such like an iconic archetype that you can sort of make it your own, and there's a plenty of references in popular media to be able to sort of work off of. And actually, speaking of the archetypes, let's go through the ones that are written in the book right now. Again, sort of overview for each of these. I'm not going to like dive through each of the features, but we're just going to talk about what they are a little bit. First off, the Arcane Trickster. It is your magic wielding rogue. If you remember from the fighter, the Eldritch Knight, it is that, but for a rogue instead. You get effectively the same sort of thing, in that you are pulling from the wizard list. You get some cantrips, and that sort of thing. You get access to Mage Hand with like special rules around it, which in my mind, Mage Hand is one of the best cantrips because there is so much utility to it. And I personally like playing more utility as opposed to just straight damage, but that's more just me. But yeah, the Arcane Trickster is all about the magic. All about the magic. And next up is the Assassin, which is... I don't know. They named it right. It's the Assassin. Like you deal a lot of damage. That is kind of the thing that you do. They are built really to operate best in the first round, like the very first round of combat, but they are the assassin. They stab things hard or they shoot things hard, and that's kind of their whole deal. They don't necessarily like they, their meat is built around assassinating things, and that's just the way it is. Next up is the Inquisitive, which is a really, really cool archetype. It is a much more situationally applicable archetype in my mind. It is the detective style rogue. It puts a lot of focus on like investigation and like finding clues and sort of deducing different bits of information, which is really, really cool. And I really, really like it as a concept. However, it very much requires the precise campaign setting or mini game or whatever it is to be like effective to its fullest. It is perfectly effective as a subclass in general, but it has to be the right circumstance for it to like outshine everything in the ways that some of these other ones do. Like the assassin is the best at just one shot killing something, for sure. The Inquisitive is the best at detectiving, but that is not often the focus of a D&D campaign. You know what I mean? Moving on from the Inquisitive, you have the Mastermind, which you would think would be the detective, but in fact, it is more the politician. You sort of like you focus in on like people and words and secrets and that sort of thing, which is again a super cool concept, but one that you kind of have to be in the right situation for it to truly shine beyond everything else. And I feel like the campaigns that would foster these two subclasses in particular are a little bit more far between. Few and far between, that's what I'm trying to say. But that doesn't mean they're not out there. They're really phenomenal subclasses, and I highly recommend you at least read them, if nothing else. Even if you just take like a dip into them as part of a multi-class with a different class, they will give you some really, really great features to sort of buff out and round out whatever character concept you're trying to go for there. And again, on their own, they are great standalone classes. They just don't necessarily shine as easily and readily as some of the other ones do because their uses are a little bit less obvious. Moving on from the Mastermind, you have the Phantom Rogue. This one is, I think, my favorite of all the rogues. I'm going to be honest with you. It is sort of a medium kind of thing, like not like a medium shirt, like a spiritual medium kind of thing. They're connected to the souls of the departed. They get these little like trinket things that they can use to do a bunch of different cool abilities. The flavor in it is just amazing. I love it. There's a reason it is one of my favorites. I think that everybody should at least read Phantom. It is so cool, and the idea around it gives the DM so much to work with. If you are running a traditional sort of campaign or a whole bunch of other types of campaigns, the ones where it maybe doesn't work are the high political intrigue sort of campaigns where the Mastermind type of character would shine, or the like heavy mystery solving one where maybe the Inquisitive would shine a little bit more. But even so, in those, I could see how this one would work well. Next up is the Scout. This one is like a field tactician kind of feel. It bridges the gap in my mind between the Rogue and the Ranger, which I think is really cool. I obviously love the Ranger. I think I mentioned in my Ranger video that Ranger is my favorite class. Come for me. I don't know. Like, I love Rangers. I don't know what to tell you. But it fills this really, really interesting, cool role that meshes really well with the idea of a scout, like a scouting member of a party, a scouting member of like a legion or an army, that sort of thing. They are kind of soloists, but not really. They rely sort of on support, and they provide really good support. So I think that scouts are really, really cool in that way too. Moving on from Scout, you have the Soul Knife, which is a Psi Warrior type rogue almost, which is really cool. You get Psi points, you can do stuff with Psi points, and as I mentioned when I talked about the Psi Warrior, it is really well refined and well done, and the Soul Knife really does kind of follow that. Another really cool thing about the Soul Knife is that you can, I am almost positive, yeah, you can pull daggers like out of thin air. Like you can make brain daggers essentially and throw them and then they disappear, which is cool because then you have unlimited ammunition for all of your dagger throwing needs. And often that becomes an issue when you don't have, I don't know, Vax's blink back belt. There we go. from campaign 1 of Critical Role. Moving on from Soul Knife, we come to Swashbuckler, which was my favorite rogue subclass until the Phantom came out. I adore the Swashbuckler because it is a lot of fun in my mind. A lot of the other rogue subclasses that have a secondary skill other than dexterity are intelligence based, and the Swashbuckler is charisma based, which I am a fan of because I like charisma characters, in spite of the fact that I don't really have charisma characters high, or charisma classes necessarily high on my list of like absolute favorites all the time. But I love dumping a bunch into charisma because I think that you get a lot out of charisma based things. Plus, the idea sort of paints this picture with them being sort of a soloist because they can get their sneak attack if they're like one-on-one with something. You feel sort of more your like pluckish rogue kind of like character in your mind, like Malcolm Reynolds or Jack Sparrow, I guess, or that sort of vibe, and that's always a fun vibe for me in my head to like play around with. And finally, we come to the Thief, which again, like the Assassin, is very, very well made. It's all about like breaking and entering. It's good for like second story work. I think is actually the name of one of the features, like climbing buildings, breaking into stuff. They're the best at what they do in that sense, unless your method is more the breaking part of breaking and entering than the entering part of breaking and entering, in which case you might want to go with a barbarian where you can just headbutt through the door or something like that. But thieves are aptly named. They are the thievy types. And that brings us to the end of all of the subclasses of rogues. All right, and that is everything that I have to talk to you guys about today. Thank you so much for making me part of your morning routine. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much in particular to my patrons. You guys are the ones that make this show possible. If you are interested and able to become a patron, there is a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I greatly, greatly appreciate every little bit of support that comes my way. Yeah, I believe that is it. I think that tomorrow I'm actually going to be playing catch-up a little bit, and I'm going to do another one of these class sort of rundowns. So stick around to see what I have to say about the Sorcerer tomorrow. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, keep on rolling.